Welcome to the AgCulture Podcast, where we share insights about the future of agriculture. Each week, we dive into the stories, technology, and ideas shaping a sustainable and profitable future for farms and rural communities alike. I'm Paul Windemaller, host of the AgCulture Podcast, and today I'm joined by Barb Stefanyshyn-Cote to discuss her and her husband John's journey from commodity row crop farming into the world of award-winning high-end whiskey and gin production. They are the founders and co-owners of Black Fox Farms and Distillery in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. I had the opportunity to meet Barb and John in Saskatoon this year when I was traveling for my Nuffield Scholarship Program back in July, and really were inspired by their story, and I thought it would be a great one to share here on the podcast. So please stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy as much as I did the story of Barb and John's journey through agriculture. Hey everyone, before we get started with today's episode, I just wanted to take a second to thank our sponsors, Bank Barn. I love these guys and what they're doing to streamline banking in agriculture. They're helping to connect farmers and lenders so that today's farmers have more options no matter the size of operation. Check out bankbarn.io to learn more. On today's episode, we have Barb Stefanyshyn-Cote from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Welcome to the podcast. Barb, thanks for being here today.
It is my pleasure to be here.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation. Barb and I first met at the International Farm Managers Association conference this past July in Saskatoon, where you were one of the speakers on a panel of, I believe it was basically farm resilience, right?
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Yeah, and so I really was intrigued by your story and your husband, John, and your story that you spoke about. So I really wanted to bring that to our audience today. So why don't we start a little bit about your background and what you guys, I guess the start of your career, what that looked like, and then we'll get into the story of how that really changed.
Well, John and I grew up on the farm. So we both had experience right from the get-go. He was on more of a grain farm. I grew up more on a mixed farm that raised purebred cattle. So I'm still a little biased to the cattle I like. But we met in the College of Agriculture at the University of Saskatchewan, and we went back farming. That was the time. That was what we did.
And you went back to his family farm or your family farm, or what did that look like?
We went back to his family farm. He was the youngest of 5, and he had been, I would say, pretty much groomed to take over the farm. And the other interesting part about it is this was the late 1980s, and out of our grad class of, 200 students, there were probably a dozen of us that went back farming, because at that point in time, interest rates were so high, farms were not doing well, and everyone was being encouraged not to go back to the farm, to get a job off farm.
And you guys were among the few that actually went back to the farm, which kind of shows your tenacity and willingness to want to give it a go, right?
Correct. That is definitely that. Yeah. That it was, and it was expected. So he went back. Okay. John took over the farm. I did some, I worked off the farm.
Okay, and what was just a predominantly cropping enterprise after you guys took it over too?
Yeah.
You didn't integrate cattle at that point?
No, we were. We call it a straight grain farm, and it was 1,500 acres. We grew wheat and barley and canola at that time.
Okay. And then eventually morphed into another business that was kind of in the same realm, but you want to talk a little bit about that, and as you started your family, what that looked like.
That's what we did is we found a partner in the community and became partners in a fuel and fertilizer dealership. So we had 4 different satellite locations where we provided bulk fuel and fertilizer to the local farmers and businesses in the area.
And you were part of that at that point in your career, right? You joined the enterprise at that point.
We actually, John and I had started the fuel and fertilizer dealership, but I too had gone back to finish a master's degree, and I ran a livestock nutrition consulting business from the farm.
Okay. So you were getting more diversified. And what was the reason for that diversification at the time?
Low grain prices would definitely be in there, high interest rates, but it also was opportunity. A chance to expand and do things and be involved outside of what we were. At the same time, we too were expanding the grain farm. So we went from 1,500 acres up to 5,000 acres. We were cropping a lot of our own, but we were also doing some custom work for some of the neighbors that were we were at the edge of that cusp where the farmers were getting older and they were looking for help, and they wanted somebody younger to come in but they weren't ready to sell the farm yet.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. And through that process, you said you went back and got your master's, but you and your husband also were part of the Nuffield Scholarship program, which I'm a part of. That was one of the things that made me want to come talk to you guys after you spoke. So walk us through a little bit about what that looked like. What time frame in your career did you do that? And what type of an impact when you started really getting off the farm and outside of Saskatchewan did that make on your career?
So being awarded a Nuffield Scholarship in the early 2000s was a real game changer for me. I had the chance to travel to England, Scotland, France, Belgium, Wales. I then went to the US, and then I went to China, Japan, and Australia. So I had this really fantastic opportunity to see different things in different countries, to see agriculture in different countries. And that really had an impact on me that is still impacting me today that I didn't realize. But it was a network that gave me, access to people globally. And that is just something that's so outstanding. So I came home from that experience really excited and explaining to my husband that, oh my word, we need to travel. We need to take our children and travel, and we need to see different parts of the world. So we actually did. We took a sabbatical from our grain farm. We rented out the farm for 2 years, and we went and lived in Mexico for a year and in Chile for a year with our children.
Wow. That was quite the experience, I'm sure, for your whole family.
It sure was. And I would really highly recommend it to anybody. If you have the opportunity to travel with your children, take it. A lot of people try to get all their travel in when they're single, but traveling with your children is a whole new experience and opens so many more doors.
Yeah, you definitely see things through a little bit different lens when you're traveling with kids, isn't it?
Definitely, yes. And they also, watching them learn is really incredible.
Yeah.
And they don't know the impact that it had on them till many years later also.
Right. So you did that, you said, for 2 years, then you came back home.
Correct.
What did that look like when you stepped off the plane back at home?
So when we stepped off that plane, I would say not a lot had changed. We returned to the same type of farming that we had left, but we came back with a lot more new ideas, new thoughts, and new processes. Another experience that happened while we were on sabbatical was that friends of ours had called up my husband and said, "You're not doing much. Would you care to do some consulting right now?" And my husband said, "Sure. What would you like me to do?" And they said, "Well, we'd like you to teach people how to grow canola." And John said, "I'm pretty good at that. I can do that." And then they said, "In Kazakhstan." And he said, "Why not?"
Where's that?
Yeah, exactly.
So he went to Kazakhstan.
That is correct. And so the interesting part about that was that in Kazakhstan, the company that he was working with would not work with any farm that was smaller than 100,000 acres.
Oh, wow. So a little different scale than what you guys were used to at the time.
Extremely different scale. And you want to know what's different about farming in Kazakhstan and farming in Saskatchewan?
A lot?
Not much. Shocking.
Not much, really? Okay.
Not much. Their climate is the same. Their soil types are the same. They have a thicker layer of topsoil than we have. What they didn't have was they didn't have the technology that we had, the farm equipment and everything else, but they had labor. They had people that would drive the tractor from east to west on these farms, and then someone who would drive, a different someone that would drive from west to east. And so now with the same climate conditions, their climatic conditions, the same soil, the same now canola and canola technology that we had, it looked like the writing was on the wall that we either needed to become a much larger grain farm because we would not be economically viable, or we needed to do something different.
And by the looks of your background, I don't see big grain bins. I see something a little more valuable, maybe a little bit tastier too. But so you completely shifted gears. You went from a commodity to looking at doing a branded type product, huh?
That's it was one of our goals that we wanted when we came back from Chile. We started grain farming again because that was what we knew, that was what we were good at.
Right.
And 2 years after our return, that's when we sat down again in another strategic planning session and said, you know what, this is not for us. First off, there was no land available for us to expand. If we wanted to, there was nobody that was interested in selling their land. Nobody was renting, and our neighbors had already started that expansion. So they were already at getting to 15, 20,000 acres. And here we are, just farming 5,000. And we know that that's not going to last it may last for our generation, but it wouldn't last for the next. And so we started looking at what our kids were up against. So we were 1 hour away from the nearest large center. So we're 1 hour away from hospitals. We're 1 hour away from airports. We're 1 hour away from parts departments. We had a small grocery store in town, but that was it. And what were our children going to do? And we have 4 children. And we got the vibe very strongly that farming wasn't their interest. That was like not farming the way we were doing it. And we couldn't see a future for them, nor for us. And so we did what is considered sacrilegious in my province, is we sold the family farm.
You sold the land.
We did.
Let's sit on that for a second, because most parts of the world that's considered sacrilegious, right? To sell the family farm, especially if you're farming it, not even just renting it out, you're farming it. So how did you guys get enough courage to make that tough decision? What were the mindset that you had? What were the thoughts going through your heads when you really came to that decision?
We were really looking to the future for our family. We were looking to the future for our kids, and we were looking to the future for ourselves. It got to the point where things were really good. Like, don't get me wrong, farming was very good in Leask, Saskatchewan for us, because John and I were actually awarded the Canada's Outstanding Young Farmers. We built a brand new house. We had a beautiful yard. We had great equipment. We had good setup and everything else. But it wasn't going to be sustainable in our view, not for what we were trying to do and not at the prices that we were seeing. So we decided to sell the family farm in 2010. And everyone knows what's happened to grain prices since then. And now things are starting to turn around again. But we were very fortunate that John's parents, who they were the predecessors of us, they were 100% behind us. They said, we sold you the farm when you took over. It's your farm now. You decide what you want to do. Because they made their own decision to leave, and that was they were at the time, they were in their mid 50s, whereas we were now only in our early 40s. But they were behind us 100% of the way. My parents too were of the same mindset. Granted, it wasn't their family farm, but they realized that it's a business. It's a wonderful lifestyle, but it's something that you have to do.
Yeah. What do you think so many people that might be in that situation, that maybe the best thing is for them to sell the family farm or to get off the family farm and start their own operation separate from their family? What do you think stops them from that?
Guilt. I think a lot of expectation that this is what's expected of you. And a lot of times I'm afraid that I think that's unrealistic expectations that one generation is placing on the next. We too are of the same mindset that where we would love to see the business that we're in continue for the next 200 years as a family business, it's what we wanted. It's not necessarily what our children want. And so I think burdening them with that is an unfair action on our part. We lived our lives the way we wanted to. They should be able to do the same.
Yeah. Did you feel any pressure from the community aspect of it?
Yes, we did. However, at the point in time, people were so hungry for land, and that the farm was sold in 4 days.
Oh, wow.
So, it was not an issue. And we had 3 different buyers that we had to choose from.
Wow. So you definitely timed it well.
Yes and no.
So why would you say no?
As in, if we had waited out another 5 years, we would have really cashed in on some very good grain prices.
Okay.
But other than that, and also when you're turning around and buying again, you're in the same scenario. So,
correct.
Land prices are high, and land prices are high to buy again.
When you said you were 1 hour outside of the city, where are you guys at today? What made you choose where you are and where you decided to build your setup?
So we are now outside of Saskatoon, which is one of the major cities in our province. It has a population of over 280,000 people, whereas the town we were outside of before was 500. And if you decide you want to do a business that's closer to the customer, it really makes a lot of sense to be closer to the customer.
Yep, that's for sure. And you started out not with a distillery, but just as growing flowers and fruits and things like that, correct?
So our original thoughts was so we sold thousands of acres and we bought 80. And when you're
80 acres.
Yes. So when you downsize like that, you cannot grow wheat and barley and peas and canola and flax and those things that you're accustomed to growing on large scale and make a living. So we decided it was going to be vegetables and a winery. It is not either of those. It is flowers and a distillery now. So there were a few changes along the way.
What were some of the lessons that you learned through that process?
Oh, many. One of the first ones that I would say is choose a name that you want to stick with. So we originally branded our farm Tierra del Sol and Black Fox Spirits. We found out that people that knew about the flower side and the farming side knew Tierra del Sol, but they didn't know anything about Black Fox. And those that knew about Black Fox didn't know anything about the farming side. So about 2 years into the process, we bit the bullet, lost all of our social media accounts that we had built up, or all of our social media following that we had built up, and rebranded to Black Fox Farm and Distillery, which says what we are and does what we do.
Barb, let's talk a little bit about the big differences. You said you went from 5,000 acres to 80 acres, from a commodity business to a branded business. You're just talking about your social media following and the importance of having the right name. What are some of the other challenges that you guys faced as you were completely revamping the business model? I mean, you probably had a lot of construction to do on infrastructure. You had to figure out how to become good at marketing, good at production of spirits. Like what are all the things that you had to skill up on as you started your new venture?
Our new business now is making ultra premium gin and whiskey. That is our main focus. And we had zero experience in doing that prior to this. So that was a pretty steep learning curve. The other part of it is at the time that we started, which is approximately 9 years ago, it was a new industry for everybody because you could make wine at home, you could make your own beer at home, but it was illegal to make your own spirits at home. It still is. So unless you have a distilling license, you are not allowed to distill in small batches, which is what we do. And so there was a steep learning curve to understand the process, to understand the product, to understand everything that you're doing with it. But I happen to marry a guy with a good palate, so that's where it's been an advantage, and it is something that we're very keen on. And it actually, the best part about it is that we were actually able to use our agricultural expertise to build this distillery. So in our province, there are 2 types of distilling licenses. There's a type 1, which means that you start with 100% raw ingredients. You distill them, you make your own spirits, and then you either put them in a barrel and make whiskey out of them, or you redistill them again and you make gin and make vodka and all of those types of things. A type 2 license means that you are allowed to bring in pre-made ethanol and do the same thing. So in a way, I tend to have a bit of an issue with this because it's like baking a cake. You can bake a cake from scratch, or you can bake a cake from a cake mix. You both get a cake at the end, but I'll challenge you that quality is a little bit different. And I ask that, don't tell me that that's your craft cake if it came out of a box. That's Betty Crocker's craft cake. It's not yours. So in our entire craft industry globally, about 90% are type 2 distillers and only about 10% are type 1. And John and I take it that one step further where we actually grow the ingredients that go into our bottles. So it was a way that we could take that ag expertise that we had, our knowledge and our ability to grow things and harvest them and store them and turn them into a product that was advantageous for the customer.
And was that done differently? Did you have to grow things differently because of the end product that you were trying to make?
Yes. You choose different varieties, you choose different fertilization programs, but it really does come down to varietal selection and what you want that end product to taste like, because varieties do taste differently. And we really are blessed with being able to farm here where we are in central Saskatchewan, which is considered fairly north to where a lot of you are, in that we have these really long days during our growing season and really cool nights. So flavors concentrate differently. I see it in the flowers that we grow as well, that the colors are much more vibrant here in the varieties that I grow, where the same varieties grow in different locations. They're just not quite the same.
So besides growing the grains that go into your product, what did you guys have to learn? Did you bring in some experts on how to distill? How'd you learn what equipment to buy? Like there's a whole different process to what you're doing there than like what you said that you knew.
You are right. And what we did is John went actually down to Chicago to work with a different distillery there, just to get some hands-on experience. And while he was there, you are going to appreciate this, and hopefully your audience does too. While they are there, he notices that the gentleman that is filling the mash tank, this great big tank where you put the grain in, is taking a 5-gallon pail, scooping the grain out of the tote, climbing it up the ladder to the top of the mash tank, dumping it in, and bringing it back down. And he comes down and he gets another 5-gallon pail. And you have to understand that these mash tanks take 1,000 pounds of grain. So this is not a simple process. So John, being the farmer, comes up to him and he says, "Do you guys not know what an auger is?" And they said, "No." So John took them to the edge of town where all the farm equipment is sold, helped them purchase an auger, help them set it up. And they think my husband is a rock god. He is the smartest man. They think he is so fantastic. And they were also having issues with the tote of grain that they were storing. They stored it right next to the still. And you have to understand what a still does is it really boils the grain. So it's hot.
Right, it gets hot.
It's hot, it's steamy, and their grain kept going moldy. And they didn't understand why. And so John explained to them, it'd be better if you stored the grain in a different location where it can stay dry and cooler. It would last longer. So the fun part of the story is that 2 years later, after we started distilling, John went back to that distillery with some of our products just to see, are we doing a good job, and double check everything. And they assured us that we were. And he goes to the back, and that young gentleman who was hauling the corn up the ladder comes and gives him this great big bear hug and says, "I can't thank you enough. I no longer have to haul the grain, and I'm in bottling now." So it was a very exciting time.
So he taught them as much as he learned from them.
Yes, because it's equipment. And if you understand equipment, it isn't a far stretch to understand other equipment.
So Barb, now let's switch from equipment to marketing. What did that look like? Because obviously, one of the reasons why most farmers enjoy growing commodities is because they can just bring it someplace and let somebody else worry about the marketing, right?
So here in Canada, you might have been familiar that we had what was called the Canadian Wheat Board that did all of our marketing for us. And when it was abolished, all of us grain farmers were like, yes, now we get to do our own marketing, and now we can look after things. And really and truly, is marketing as a commodity person is phoning around and seeing who has the best price. And so, or the best, the best basis or the best conditions of delivery or things like that. Marketing, when you're going direct to consumer, is a whole different ball game. It is something that we really had very little experience in, and we are still learning on a day-to-day basis. But I would say that we spend 35% of our budget on marketing, which is everything from advertising to PR to social media and digital and everything that's involved in it. And if you want to talk steep learning curve, that's where the steepest learning curve came, undoubtedly.
So how did you learn what was a good investment for marketing and what was a poor investment?
I haven't yet.
Well, hey, it's all right to be candid. That's a big part of your budget. So
it is.
I find that really interesting. And I don't think a lot of people that are looking to do the direct to consumer farm products are probably the shining stars at figuring out the marketing pieces.
The marketing piece is definitely the most challenging in our new business right now. And we still are learning what are the best ways, and it changes. It changes in that we are also targeting an ultra premium or a luxury, consumer, which I will be honest, that's not the background that we come from, but we believe that we have the product that fits what they are looking for. So a lot of it is trial and error. A lot of it is reaching out to the experts in the area and working with them. I completed a mini MBA in brand management this summer just so that I could have a little more background and that. And so if you're doing a business such as ours, I think one of the biggest things is you have to like learning because there's lots of it.
There's lots to learn. And are you focused mostly on marketing toward driving traffic into your location, or are you doing a lot of marketing to try to build a online or ship to type of business model?
Actually, a little bit of the first. We do drive a lot of traffic here to our location. We are a tourist location, so we do the tours, we do tastings, we host events, we do classes. And that is also where the flowers come in. where we have a U-Pick flower operation where people can come and pick their own flowers, and a U-Pick pumpkin operation. So we also grow, 25,000 pumpkins. We've got 5 acres of cut flowers, and those are really to attract customers out to our location, and so that we have the chance to talk to them about our spirits and give them an opportunity to taste them. But the second part of our business is online is very difficult because it's alcohol. And so there's a lot of restrictions as to where you can ship and where you cannot. So we are targeting the export market is where we are. Again, because we have a luxury product, it is a niche product for only a certain segment of the population. And that segment of population is very slim in Saskatchewan. We have just over 1 million people in our province, and I can go to Shanghai that has 26 million people, which is almost the size of my entire country, or I could go to London that has 8 million people. And because of the restrictions that we have here on alcohol in Canada, we cannot ship across borders in the provinces. It's easier for me to ship to London than it is for me to ship to Toronto.
Interesting. So that brings a whole different dynamic to marketing. Are you working through distributors on that end, or are you trying to market direct to consumers in those markets?
A little bit of both. Again, in some countries you must work with the distributor, and in some countries you're allowed to go direct to the consumer. And It is, so it's a combination, and that is a learning curve too. Like, not only do I have to learn how to market direct to the consumer or how to market through a distributor, but in every country it's different and the approach is different. And so it just, my days are never boring.
Always keeping you on your toes, I'm sure.
Yes.
So what advice do you have for other couples that are in a commodity farming situation right now that are thinking about jumping ship and really looking at doing a branded type business that you could help them navigate the first year or two with?
I think the biggest thing to find is, if you're going to do this jump, is make sure you do some market research ahead of time. Market research, what I mean here is, who is going to be your customer and how am I going to get it to them? We in agriculture are very good at saying, I grew this and I grow it very well, you should buy it. And I don't think necessarily that is the best way of going about this process. Anyone that doesn't come from agriculture, when they're getting into a business, they tend to look around for what is missing in an area, and they move into that area to fill that void. In agriculture, we're a little different because we're so used to growing things and producing things that, well, I can do this. And unfortunately, that sometimes is a recipe for disaster, because maybe what you grow, people don't want. And if you can't give it to them in the form that they want, or if you don't have a much better option than what they really, really have already, they're not interested.
Yeah, no, that's definitely great advice. I see that so often where you see a new direct-to-market farm start and they're in the wrong location. They didn't do their research on who they're targeting, and they make it 1 year and they're done.
Yeah.
So I think that's great advice.
It is. It's difficult that, if our parents hadn't still been alive at the time we made the move, we likely would have been in Mexico. We loved the people, we loved the climate, we loved the food, we loved everything about it. Again, would Mexico have been the right move for us? Maybe not. But in hindsight, if we were to relocate, I probably would suggest that maybe we should have opened up a distillery in a province that had a lot more population than our own.
So even though you're by a big city center for your province, it's still a small market.
That's exactly it. It's still a small market.
Yeah.
Bigger than Leask, but it's still small.
What's your aspirations for Black Fox Farms and Distillery? What does it look like? I know you said you'd like to see it be a 200-year-old company. Well, you're probably not going to be around at that point, but that's your aspirations for it. So how do you set that up from the beginning?
I think the way that you set that up is that you set it up so that it could be built upon, that you are the start of this, that there is room for expansion, that you are not doing it all, I think the whole thing is that you, in order for this business to survive and thrive, you have to have customers. Pure and simple. That's what you have to do. So our goal, or our responsibility, if we want to make this a 200-year-old company, is to really get those customers excited that this is something that is a legacy, that just like Tiffany's blue box with their jewelry, this is something that people buy and experience, and it's our job to make sure that we get that storytelling right off the bat, and that we do a good job of finding what the customer really wants, and making sure that that's what we're producing.
Yeah, and with that, you were talking earlier about trying to find a hole in the market and trying to fill that. So are you guys looking for maybe a niche type of way to produce your spirits, or a something unique that really makes it different than what else is on the market?
Definitely. And I think that we have a lot of those differentiators. One, that we are the farmers that are growing the ingredients. Two, our main grain that we grow for spirit production is triticale, which is a wheat rye hybrid that nobody else uses. Three, we are producing a ultra premium Canadian whiskey that there aren't very many out there. There were a lot of people that came to us and said, well, why don't you do a barley whiskey? Because Scotch is, all based on barley. And I went, do you know how many Scotch distilleries there are out there that I have to compete against? This way I can do something that's totally unchallenged in the market, that if I do a good enough job, I can set the market.
Yep. Well, that's great advice.
Don't make another oatmeal cookie, because there's a lot of good oatmeal cookies out there.
Right. Try to find something unique and latch onto that.
Part of the challenge or the excitement of doing a branded business is that you get to interact with the customers. And a lot of days, that is the absolute best part of my day. My office is just outside the patio, and I get to hear people that are laughing and talking and connecting with one another. And I know that it was because of us that they had this opportunity. And it really is very heartwarming. And when people pick a bucket of flowers and they bring it into the distillery and they go, did you see this? And I go, yes, I've seen this, but I'm so happy you get to take it home with you. That is incredibly rewarding and joyful. And then there's the other days when you've had enough of the customers and you're ready for them to go home, and they drive into your property at all hours of the day because, when you say to them, well, I'm sorry, we're not open, and they said, well, that's okay, we'll just walk around. And it's like, no,
they don't understand. Yeah, you're not open.
Yes, yeah, they don't. You don't do that at Walmart. Like, just because they're not open, you just say, it's okay, I'll just walk around. Or you don't show up at 8:00 at night when the place is closed and say, but I just need, and you go, and a lot of times, well, I would say 99.9% of the times you say yes, because you are a farm, and farmers are known for their warm and welcome, demeanor, and we like people that way. But there is the other side of it too.
I grew up, my brother had a greenhouse business at our small farm where I grew up on, and I know exactly what you're talking about. Sunday afternoon when we were closed, you'd have somebody, I just need a few flowers.
I know. And it's like, I just need a few hours to do vacuuming in my house. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the interesting part about working with customers.
Yes.
Barb, I know you guys have done pretty well with your distillery products. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the awards that you guys have won and the gratification that you probably get from that, I'm sure?
Oh, of course. And how can I not do this without props, right? So this is our whiskey, and it is called SE11, which stands for the Southeast Quarter of Section 11, Township 26, Range 6, west of the 3rd Meridian. It is our legal land description. And so what we wanted is we wanted the whiskey to speak to where it was located. But the interesting part about this is that part of the reason that we chose that name is because we had a trademark conflict. We trademarked Black Fox in Canada, and when we went to trademark it globally, there was another company out of the Czech Republic that had an absinthe that was trademarked Black Fox. So they said, that's nice of you guys, but we already have this name. At that time, our whiskey was supposed to be released, and we had people waiting, and everything was ready to go except for the label. So we chose the name SE11, and now we have since resolved the conflict. We have negotiated that we get to share the name Black Fox. So we are now in the process of rebranding our whiskey into Black Fox whiskey. So that is a bit of a challenge, and that can also be included in the marketing section, if you like.
Yep.
But you had asked about awards. So I happen to marry, as I mentioned before, a guy with a very good palate. So my husband, John, is the creator, the head distiller. He is the creator of all our recipes. He is the one who decides what gets bottled and what does not. We have won gold medals in Olympic-type competitions. We have won master's medals, which are higher than gold. We have a gin that I believe our oak gin. That's not it. Anyway, one of our gins came home as the world's best. Not bad.
Wow.
Not bad for a couple little peanuts out of Saskatchewan. Our whiskeys have been named some of the top 20 whiskeys of the world. The Masters Medal, which are higher than gold. And there's a gentleman in the UK by the name of Jim Murray that puts out a whiskey Bible where he rates 4,300 whiskeys every year. Anyway, he is a controversial gentleman, but he's rated our whiskeys at 95 points out of 100. So
those are quite a few accolades for being early on in your venture with the spirits, because usually it takes hundreds of years to get those type of accolades.
And that is, I think it speaks to the quality of ingredients, the terroir that we're showing off, and of course the skill of my distiller.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Barb, I really appreciate your insights into your life story and your career. I was really inspired by your and John's story that you told at the IFMA conference, that you had the tenacity to move forward and do something that was very, very taboo in agriculture. And you turned it into something amazing, award-winning products, and a very different way of farming. So I'm really inspired by that, and also really inspired by how you're able to change your mindset in mid-career from a very commodity-focused mindset to a branded mindset, and what you guys are doing with your business now, branding all over the world. It's a very incredible story, and really appreciate you sharing that with the audience here today. So thank you so much, Barb. Where can people find out more about Black Fox Farm and Distillery?
Well, thank you, Paul, for those kind words. And I think just my parting words for your audience would be that if we could do it, really anybody can do it. We're nothing special, and we just decided that this is what would work better for us, and we followed after it. And so I think anybody can make that leap as well. You can find us online at blackfoxfarmanddistillery.com. We're also on Instagram and Twitter, or X, pardon me. And, LinkedIn, you can please reach out and connect with me. I would love to make those connections. Facebook, of course, as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Barb. We'll put those links in our show notes. So if you are interested, just click on those links to find out more about Barb and John's venture of Black Fox Farm and Distillery. Thank you so much again, Barb.
You are very welcome. And do come visit us any chance you get.
I know I'm coming back to you guys when I get back up to Saskatchewan.
Perfect.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the AgCulture Podcast with Barb Stefanyshyn-Cote. I know I really enjoyed hearing her story again, even for the second time, and I'm sure you got a lot out of it too. So please, if you'd be willing to like and subscribe and share this episode with somebody that you know, that's how we stay connected, and you can support our mission here at AgCulture Podcast to bring these stories to others to encourage them in their journey in agriculture. Once again, thanks for tuning in. I'm Paul Windemaller, and we'll see you next week for another exciting episode of the AgCulture Podcast.